Hi, I'm Sonya Renee Taylor, and you're watching Visions for a Child's Heart.
Heavenly mothers crying, seas of children are dying at the hands of the other child. I know her heart is breaking, feel the earth is shaking, but rivers flow from the tears she cries. She cries, she cries. See Rachel's weeping for her children. Rachel's weeping. Somehow someone's got to save them. Save the children. And if you say that love the answer, why don't we begin? Or will we just
Hi, this is Miss Evelyn, and welcome to Visions for a Child's Heart. I know every program I start saying I'm really excited, but that's what happens when you do what you love and you love what you do, and when you love the people and what they represent when they come. Today, my guest is someone who actually is going to talk about two different things. You're used to this program being specifically about issues related to foster care. However, some of you may realize that since next to our last episode, I've got a new do, and this young lady has a lot to do with it. And I realize it's not just about what your experience has been or who you lived with. It's about how you show up in this world. And I'm very excited because she has made a real difference. And I usually don't do this, but I've got to read some of her accolades and her accomplishments because I want you to know who is in our presence today. And there's this quote that I saw on her website. It says, "Art can change, shift, investigate, entertain, illuminate, and make us fall in love with ourselves and each other." And that is just so touching. And I know that she's helped me to come to love myself in a totally different light. She is an international award-winning poet, national and international poetry slam champion, get it right, a captivating and entertaining audience, and an activist and transformational leader who believes in the life-shifting power of art. Her appearances have been on HBO, the Oxygen Network, BET, CNN, and MTV. I personally found her on PBS and again on TV1 on Verses and Flow. She's the founder of The Body Is Not an Apology, an international radical self-love and body empowerment movement, and the Ruckus Project, which is an acronym for Radically Unapologetic Healing Challenge for Us, a 30-day transformational healing action to address pain, shame, trauma, and fear in our lives. Not only that, she travels all across the United States. She has appeared in New Zealand, Australia, England, Scotland, Sweden, Canada, and the Netherlands. And she also has had her works translated in Dutch, Swedish, and German. She's my shero. Even though she's young enough to be my daughter, she's still my shero. Welcome, Miss Sonya Renee Taylor.
Thanks so much for having me. Thank you.
You just don't know how excited I am to have you here today.
I'm excited for you.
My first seeing you, I think I probably jumped on the computer as soon as it was over, and it's been about almost a year and a half now. It was a Black history program on PBS, and I just walked in the middle of it, so I just realized a couple of months ago that I hadn't even seen the beginning of it. I caught it right in the middle, and I stopped. And somehow I knew where you were going with it, and I just hit record, and I was floored. I was floored. So I'll tell the audience a little bit about that. But welcome.
Thank you.
And tell us a little bit, tell our audience, what started The Body Is Not an Apology?
The Body Is Not an Apology started completely by a phone, picture inside my cell phone. I had taken a selfie, is what they call them, and it was of me in this little black corset, and I thought I looked really hot. I liked the picture a lot, but I like to describe it as those voices. They're not of us, they're outside of us, but they're in our heads now. They tell us why we shouldn't do something. They're self-critical and they're mean, and they tell us that we're too big or we're not beautiful enough, and so that voice was really loud, and it was keeping me from posting the picture. And so I had this particular one evening, I was just at a friend's house, and I came across the picture again in my phone as I was scrolling through, and I was like, I really want to post this picture. And it just so happened that a friend of mine had posted a picture that was circulating online of a plus-size model named Tara Lynn. And Tara Lynn had just done an entire sort of exhibit, or I'm trying to think what you call it when models, a spread.
Okay.
She had just done a spread for a lingerie company. And she had a picture in her black corset. And I thought, somebody just paid this woman a lot of money to stand here in this black corset, and whatever that little inside voice in her did not stop her from collecting her check and being fabulous.
Hello.
And so I was like, fine, I'm going to post this picture. And so I posted the picture, and underneath it I said, in this photo, I'm 230 pounds. I have a terrible decision in the shape of a Hershey's Kiss tattoo on my left thigh. and I'm loving myself. I love it. Post a picture where you love yourself. And the next morning I woke up and like 30 people had all posted pictures, and I was like, oh, maybe I should start a little Facebook page where we can, just feel good about ourselves. And that was 17,880 some people ago.
Wow. Amazing.
Yeah.
Listening to the right voice, shutting out those
Yes.
negative tapes.
Yes.
Those negative tapes.
Yes.
Wow, amazing.
Totally.
And my message is follow your heart.
Yeah.
But the other part is that you have to heal it first.
Yes.
Heal
yes.
your heart and follow it.
Right.
And I said that was going to become my message now. And they said, be careful what you ask for unless you get it, because I've had a lot of healing I've had to be doing since I made this decision. Wow.
That's exactly
So
what it
that
was.
was before you even did the shave.
No, yes, that was before I did the shave. So
Okay.
at that time, it was really just, it was interesting. It's been, just like you said, that idea of heal your heart. Once you decide to do it, all sorts of opportunities present themselves around healing. And so it was about maybe 5 or 6 months after I had started The Body Is Not an Apology that I started feeling out of integrity. I was, every day I would wake up and I'd post on the page and tell people to radically love themselves and tell them to feel good about themselves and powerful. And then I would slap on a wig to go to the grocery store, to walk my dog, to go on a date. No one saw me without my wigs. And it was all because I was living in such shame around traction alopecia that I got when I was like in 2nd grade. And so I had been living for decades underneath wigs and in shame about my hair. And one morning I just was like, this is not who I want to be in the world. I can't tell people to radically love themselves and then go home and live in shame every day. That doesn't work. And so I decided I needed to do something radical to address that shame, and that's how the Ruckus Project was born.
Right. And that's the part of the story that I came
Yes,
into,
and you came in on that
on the
part.
story, because she was saying, everywhere I went, see, I go to walk the dog and I have a dog, and that's exactly I even put on my wig. And for me, the alopecia started in my early 20s. And see, I had always had shoulder length hair, so everybody always complimented me on my smile and my hair, and it kept getting thinner and thinner at the top. It was hereditary.
Right.
And probably about 10 years ago, I started wearing wigs. First I didn't want to do them, but then I found out I could be anybody I wanted to be, right? So I do all these things, but when I started doing public speaking, I would, try to get them fixed. And turns out my former hairdresser in Oakland, when I had hair, had just moved here in Vallejo, so she would cut the wigs where they would look like my natural hair. But I had that same feeling. I was tired of hiding, not wanting to fear, what have happened if it comes off, or something, and I love kids, and kids love to play and pull your hair. And I had thought about it. Actually, I had even cut my hair down. A friend of mine had gone through chemo for breast cancer, and so when her hair came out, she said, I shaved my head. I didn't totally shave, but I cut it off, and she was the only one who saw it, but I still had not, and that had been like 4 or 5 years before I seen, but I kept saying I'm going to do it. So that was just, to me, it was a God thing. And I saw, but I loved it. I just saw this beautiful, big, beautiful black woman on stage. You had this dress that was kicking, the hair was kicking, and it's like she was talking, she said, to the door, and you said, until something, one day it might look something like this. What if I wasn't? And she just took the wig and took it off and threw it. And I just started jumping up, screaming. I was like, oh my gosh! I think I told you it was like the Holy Ghost in me. And I laughed, and it's just it impacted me so, and I just like, I'm going to do it. I'm going to do it. And that was in February. And I actually went to go to the Barber College to get it, and they were closed that day. And I was about to take a trip to Brazil. And so I didn't do it because I figured that would be a good time to have it, when I'm not around people. So I just wore my head wrapped the whole time.
So when I was 6, my father was in the military, and my mother was mostly absent from my life in the formative years. She had drug addiction. And so it was just my father and my brother and I.
Okay.
And then my father remarried. And we moved to Virginia. And it just, just merging the family is challenging. And I think that there's a way in which everybody has to sort of show up willing to give a little and compromise. And I just really, I didn't feel like I had a place where I was in my family. And so it was right before my senior year of high school, and I decided that I couldn't live there anymore, and so I moved out. It was just about to turn 17, and I moved back to Pittsburgh, which is where all my family was. And at first I was staying with some aunts and house hopping and that sort of thing, but everything was up in the air, and nobody really had a space for me. And I had a guidance counselor in high school who pulled me into the office one day, and he said, and his name was Mr. Rustlin, and he was the most cantankerous and fantastic human being ever. He told me, so I hear your house happened. Well, there's somebody in your school who is in this program. Call these people. And he just handed me a number to call these people. And I called them, and it was Three Rivers Youth Alternatives Transitional Living Program. And at the time, I was really, I had a job, I was working and going to school, and I was taking care of myself. I was doing a good job. I was a good kid for the most part. And at the time, they had 4 beds in the transitional living program, which were for girls between the ages of 17 and 21 for whatever reason, could not be at home and were transitioning into adulthood. And then they had a shelter, a homeless shelter, which was like a group room. There were maybe 6 beds in it, for girls who were transitioning, going back home after being on the streets or runaways. Okay. And I did the interview for the program, and they didn't have a bed at the time. And neither did I. At this point, I had been staying with my aunt in my cousin's room, and he was coming home from college, and she didn't have a spare room. So I was at the place where I didn't have any place to go, and they said, well, if you don't mind staying in the loft program for a while, we would love to have you. And so I first moved into the homeless shelter portion of it. So it was me and 6 girls, and they would rotate and that sort of thing. And then I guess I stayed there for about 4 or 5 months, and then I finally got a room in the transitional program, and I lived there for 2 years.
Wow.
Yeah, and it was awesome. It was the director of the program, Elmer Goodson, taught me how to drive. I learned how to drive in his van, and they helped me get into college. They helped me learn how to apply as an independent student, and it was such a gift. I didn't know how much I needed it, but it was such a gift, and it really helped me build the foundation for adulthood and how to go into the world. So
amazing.
It was awesome.
Did you have interaction with your family during those 2 years?
I did. My father and the rest of my family were still in Virginia, and things were certainly tense between us. And they stayed tense for many, many, many years, but not not isolated. We were not speaking, but the relationship was challenged. It was challenged, and there were a multitude of reasons why the relationship was challenged. But I would say just in the last year, we're sort of starting to explore the possibility of building a new relationship.
Right. But and I want you to address this to some of our young people. I believe, because the young people that I work with are the ones that a lot of people don't want to work with, because I recognize their strengths.
Yes.
And my take is, it's like the movies, you just can't handle the truth, because I think the truth comes out of our young people who are usually more outspoken.
Yes.
Don't tolerate the okie dokie, that we have adapted to. And I always say, you are called. You have a calling, and you can't grow your wings in that environment because
Yes.
they're not ready for
They're
you.
not, yes,
Mhm.
absolutely.
And I almost bet you that was probably the
Absolutely.
case with you.
Absolutely. I think that I've always been, like, I used to say that I'm sure that I came out of my mother's womb with jazz hands, like, which was very uncomfortable for her. But I've always been outspoken, and I've always been that I've never been afraid of the spotlight. I've never been that kid. And so when things aren't fair, when I feel like something is unjust, I speak on it.
Mhm.
And everybody's not ready to hear that, and
Exactly.
everybody's not. And so sometimes I think historically I have been sort of a spotlight on areas where some people are not necessarily ready to address in their lives.
Mhm.
And I think that was definitely true of my father and of his wife at the time. I just think they weren't ready for how honest,
Mhm.
that I was. And so I needed to go someplace where that wasn't a problem, where it was okay and people let me be as large as I could grow in the right sized container.
Right, exactly.
Yeah,
Without
and that
bounds.
and
Out
that
of the
happens.
box.
Yes, out of the box.
What would you say to a young person who's finding themselves like they don't fit? It's interesting because you had even said that before.
Yeah.
That doesn't fit, that is misunderstood, not accepted. What would you say to them?
I would say you're not wrong. No way that you are being is wrong. And sometimes the world isn't ready for us, and our job is to make the world ready. And that means continuing to be unapologetically ourselves. That means not shrinking to fit the world, but asking the world to constantly expand so that you can be your fullest, most brilliant self. And that's going to be uncomfortable. Like there's, I think about it in terms of like stretch marks. Like they're uncomfortable. I don't always like the way they look. And they mean that I grew.
Yeah.
They mean that I grew. And sometimes growing is uncomfortable and it's painful, but it's absolutely necessary. And so don't let them shrink you. Grow. Be your fullest self. Ask for help. Seek resources. Find a community of people who are just as out of place as you and make home.
And always know that you're never alone.
Yes,
absolutely. Or I won't say you're not alone because there is a sense of aloneness, but you're not the only one.
You are not the only
Mhm,
one. You are
mhm.
not the only one. That is absolute truth.
And I would say, in speaking your truth, because having grown up being, I'm the adult and you're the child,
Mhm.
I would still say, I teach my young people, respect the
Yes.
adults, but still speak your
The
truth.
truth. My mother always said, "It is not what you say; it is
how you say it." That's right.
It has shaped my entire existence.
Mhm.
It's absolute truth, and it allows me to say what I need to say,
Yes,
and to be mindful about how I say it, but to
Mhm.
absolutely speak my truth.
exactly. And that's what I love about my work with young people, because it's just a matter of channeling
Channeling it.
that into a different way, providing the guidelines. It's like, you're right, but let me show you how it might be received better.
Yes.
Your writing, your poetry, your traveling, how did that all come about?
It's so interesting. Every time people ask me these questions, I just realize so little of my life has anything to do with me. It's like God pulls up and says, "Get in the car," and then either my choice is to stay and say, "No, God," or to get in the car. And so each time it's just been choosing to get in the car. I was working at a nonprofit in Washington D.C. Doing HIV prevention with sex workers in Washington D.C. And there was a local spoken word organization doing a benefit for us. And my boss just happened to go around the office and say, "Anybody want to read some poems for this event?" And I was like, "Oh, well, sure," because I'd been a little journal writer and had my little folder of things that I'd written, but certainly not anything I shared or
Really?
not at all. And so I decided to write 2 pieces for this event along with a coworker. And I got to the event and I read them, and I got on stage and my hand is shaking, my little paper in it. And I often describe it as whatever that moment is in the cartoons where somebody sees the person that they love and then the sky opens and the trumpets play.
Mhm.
That's absolutely the moment that I had on that stage that day with my shaky hand. And afterwards people came up to me and they said, "Oh, where can we get that? Are you published someplace?" And I was like, "What?" I was so confused. "What do you mean published?" And I was like, "I don't even know what this is called." And so I was like, "It's an open mic." I went back to my office and Googled open mic.
Are you
I
serious?
went back to my office and Googled open mic, and then I proceeded to go to every open mic I could find every single night of the week for like forever. I just became obsessed with it. I loved it. And shortly thereafter, I discovered a poetry slam. Maybe like 2 months after that first open mic experience, I discovered poetry slam, and I got invited to compete, and I came in like 3rd place, and I was like, oh, this is fun. And so then I found out that we had a local team that took a team to the national event, and that year the national event was in St. Louis, and so I tried out for the team, and I barely made it. I almost lost with a time penalty. And then I got to nationals, and they had an individual competition, and I competed in the individual competition, and then I won the national title. And it was, and so when I got home, that was in August, and by December I had quit my job and decided to be a poet.
Oh my goodness, that is truly following your heart. 2 of the things that got me just I said, I love this lady, because when I was going through the thing, you had on YouTube, you went through the whole thing of how you did the shave of your hair, but you talked about the fear of going out in public.
Absolutely.
I remember you were sitting at the table that morning and said, okay, I'm about to go out to walk the dog for the first time. And there might be some kids out here or something. And then another night you said, you know, I'm too tired to go, so I'm going to bed. But you were like, under the bed, but I'm keeping my commitment because I told you I would do this. And it's like, see, that's what I love. I love that, because people either make up excuses for the reasons why they don't come forward, because they're hiding their pain or their discomfort of whatever it is, and they don't want the world to see. And I think that's a new part, because for myself, even as a therapist, to be able to talk about the painful aspect of it. And even, I think in one of my blogs, I talked about that whole issue of the heart being disconnected, but I realized I didn't call it depression. And I remember you sharing about having gone with that, and it's like, okay, the best way that I can probably put this forth in helping people is by more self-disclosure.
Scrolling through, and a friend of mine who had taken these pictures, and every single image was terrible, and I was going through and I was like, oh, I'm untagging this, and then something was like, you know what, I need to do something with all these pictures I can't stand. And then I was like, I'm going to start Bad Picture Monday. I was like, first of all, because the truth of the matter is, in all the pictures, I was having a fantastic time. I was filled with joy. I was filled with light. So that just made me even question, what is it that makes me decide that that's a bad picture? I'm filled with joy and light, and somehow I decide that that's a bad picture. And so I wanted to challenge that. And I also wanted a moment to say, so what? Like, okay, so I've got a double chin in this picture, or so what? You know, I've got whatever is going on. That doesn't decrease my value in the world. It doesn't make me less worthy or less important or less loved. And so what would it look like to stand in that Sonya too? Just as unapologetically as I stand in the glammed up Sonya. And so I was like, okay, I'm gonna do it. And I posted it, and then I'm just into roping people into my to my batty ideas. So when I do it, I'm just like, oh, I'm doing this thing, do it too. See, so I don't have to do it by myself. That's really that's my angle. And so, but people started doing it, and it really was an act of exercising that muscle of radical self-love. I say there's no such thing as fearless. There is only fear-facing.
Ooh!
There is only fear-facing. There is the choice to see something that is scary and to move nevertheless, to move in spite of fear. And so really, and even less than, I mean, I will own some leadership stuff, but for me what it really is it's community building. That I recognize that my survival is dependent on the world. It's dependent on other humans. It's dependent on relationships. And so much of what I do is about how do I build more vibrant, more positive relationships with humanity. And so, you know, my roping people in is really about saying, how do we build a community that really feeds each other?
It's in your community, and my thing is the village.
Yeah, it's my village, exactly. Exactly.
There's so much I can learn from you, because, wow, I got teary-eyed, because my thing is the village, but I often feeling like the village is so scattered and not connected. and seeing, the strengths of people who can do that, because people say, well, you're a leader, and it's like, well, I'm told that you're not a leader unless somebody's following.
Well, and what I'm learning, right, and just think about this, I would have never known about, I would have never known that you were at home watching the PBS show. I would have never known that, but you reached out. Imagine the amount of people who don't reach out.
True.
But that doesn't mean they're not following. That doesn't mean they're not there.
Okay.
And so someone is absolutely seeing the way that you move through the world and is being inspired by it, whether you ever hear about it or not. I'm really learned. The universe keeps showing me that again and again. So someone is following.
It's about time to wrap up. I hope you've enjoyed our little intimate conversation here.
I forgot about y'all.
I know. We're having our own moment here. But I think just the whole message is to be unapologetic about who you are. And my thing is, I go with the people talk about being selfish, and I said selfish is only negative if you do it at the expense of someone else's well-being. So I would say, do you, be you, love you, because we can't love other people very well until we learn ourselves, learn to love ourselves as well. And so everyone knows how I feel about my babies, my hearts, and I want the adults to know that we have to learn how to love ourselves to be able to effectively instill that love and that caring and acceptance for our young people that sometimes we don't even understand.
I think that what you were saying is so true, that what we give to ourselves allows us to give to others. And you can't give from an empty well. And so first you have to feed yourself. First you have to love yourself. You have to remind yourself that you are as brilliant and as beautiful and as positive and powerful as you imagine, and even more so. And anything that is in your life that is attempting to quiet that voice that knows that you're amazing, stop it. Unplug that. Unplug it. If that's the TV or the television show or the radio station or the magazine or whatever it is that's trying to tell you that you are not as amazing as you actually are, kill that. And really step into your light. And to the people who are caregivers, your ability to give, to love, to extend yourself depends on you giving to yourself first. So make sure that you take that time to give to yourself first. It just makes you a more vibrant gift to whoever's life you're impacting. So, yeah.
Amen.
Amen.
So there you have it. I hope you've enjoyed this as much as we have. And as always, do something special for a child's heart. God bless.
At the hands of the other child, I know her heart is breaking. I feel the earth is shaking. That rivers flow from the tears she cries. She cries, she cries. See Rachel's